We're joined today by James Milner, and it's time to talk all about you, James, at the moment, because you've had, although you're only in your early 30s, you're a player who's had such a long career because you started as such a young kid. Do you feel like an elder statesman of the game?
Not in my body. I think in terms of when you look at the dressing room and the club, and you see some of the birth dates, or there's some music on in the gym, and some of the lads have never heard of the people who were singing it. I think it was a few years ago, and Joe Gomez hadn't heard of the Spice Girls, and that shook me a bit, if I'm honest. But yeah, I think things like that sort of give you a wake-up call. But I feel good, and obviously you just want to play it as long as you can. And it's just strange when you see your state in the team and in the squad and position and things like that changing, as you remember being one of the young guys and always going in the middle of the square first when you do rondos and things like that, and then slowly over time that things change, and when things go wrong, people are looking at you to try help out, whereas before you could maybe hide a bit more. So I think I've been lucky, though, obviously, in terms of who I've played with and the leaders who I've played under, and you try to look at how they've always dealt with things and then maybe put it into your own game and try to be a positive influence in the squad.
But for so long, you were the pub quiz answer. You were the youngest player to score in the Premier League. It was the goal for Leeds, wasn't it? And you were 16 years and 356 days, was it?
Something like that, yeah. I think it seems so long ago now, but you see like the size of the shirts and the pitches and things like that, how much it has changed. And yeah, it's obviously a long time ago, but you don't really think about it when you're that age. Obviously, you're just looking for the next thing, getting the reserves, getting the first team. Can you get a game? Can you stay in the team? But when you look back now and think I was doing my GCSEs a few months before that, and now your mates from school are there watching you Premier League, it's probably a bigger thing looking back at it now than it was back then when you were actually doing it.
What did you get in your GCSEs?
James,
yeah, I did all right. I think I had 1B, 1C, and the rest were A's. I think I got an A star in PE, so I did okay.
Yeah, so you had something to fall back on.
I got all A's, mate. Absolutely. James, I seen you when you've come through there, and you're probably a little bit similar to myself in that we were known as versatile players. I mean, when you were coming through as a young kid, what was your position, and what do you actually think is your best position in terms of your Premier League career and what you've done?
When I come through, I was always a winger, really. I played right or left wing. Played a bit in the centre midfield, and obviously when I was really young, a bit up front. But mainly it was on the wing. Broke into the Leeds team on the wing, and then the first time I moved to the middle was with Aston Villa, really. And I still think that's my best position. I think if you look at the seasons I've had where I've played solidly in centre midfield, the first one at Aston Villa, got in Team of the Year, got into the World Cup squad, and I think I was PFA Young Player of the Year that year. Then the next time really that I had a solid season was Liverpool, and got quite a few assists over a few years there in Europe and in the league. So I think in terms of that output, I would say centre midfield. You play where you're asked to play, and different teams need different things. Like looking at my team I named before, and you have to find a way to fit into certain teams and what the side needs. And you both know that you've played in different teams and with different players. Certain wingers you play in front of you might need to overlap, other ones you just give them the ball and leave them alone. I think sometimes, I'm never going to be the star of the team, and the team be built around me. So I think it's important that as a player, you have to adapt into that team. What's required, be more attacking, and you can do that. Other times it's more defensive and covering for someone else, and other times just give the guy the ball and let him get on with it.
I mean, it's always the question for versatile players. Do you think it's been a help or a hindrance? And I probably nailed down a position at centre back in my mid-20s and stayed there throughout my career. You've still moved around at different times. Has that been a frustration for you at times, or do you think that's helped you get actually more games on the pitch?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. I think there's been times where obviously you get to different positions, help other people, and then someone's come into the position you were playing before and they might have had a few good games and you get left out then because he's had the opportunity to play well, whereas you've been doing a job for the team, and then you stay out of the team. Other times, obviously, you might have been on the bench, but you play because there's a gap in the side that needs filling, whether it's fullbacks or a different role. There's been games in my career where I've played 5 or 6 positions in one game, so I think that's probably helped me become a better player and understand the game a bit more. I know what's required and how I can help out my teammates and things like that. So I think that's definitely helped me improve as a player. But I think obviously, when you play in the same position with the same players around you, game in, game out, you hit that rhythm and you'll show your best form. I think sometimes, obviously, it's the same as being an out of the team, or when you're changing position, it isn't always easy. I mean, there's a lot of times if I'm on the bench or the team's named and he just names the team, I've got to actually ask where I'm playing, which, I watched a video in a meeting and you watch the other team and then I find out I'm playing fullback, whereas obviously if you know you're playing fullback, you'll be watching the attacking winger and how you're going to play as a fullback, whereas if you think you might be playing midfield, you watch the video in a different way and then you go out and train it. So there is challenges to it as well, but that's what it's all about, adapting, I suppose.
James, you're an experienced player. You've obviously got a really good character and you've been renowned for that over the years. But if you had to name a point in your career where you lost your confidence or a low point, would you just share with us when that was and how you felt and how you came out of it? Yeah,
a couple of times. I think big ones that stand out was probably once at Newcastle. I'd started pretty well at Leeds, gone to Newcastle. Sir Bobby got sacked and had a number of managers there. Looked like I was going to go to Villa and they pulled the plug the last minute and ended up staying. And then I wasn't even in the matchday squad at that first weekend. And that was a point there where I really had to dig deep and use always found that criticism and people are not always going to rate you. There's going to be differences of opinions, but I always try and use that to prove people wrong, if you like. So I think coming out of that phase was difficult. And then same when I went to Man City and started and played a few games and then was playing out wide and in and out of the team. And every year, obviously, they're signing a lot of players and a lot of good players. And you always start the season out of the team. You have to prove yourself at every single pre-season and fight your way into that team. And look, I've managed to do it. But if you look back now, it would have been so easy to not quite be able to fight your way back into that reckoning and perform well when you have the odd chance to play those games and then you're fully out of it and you don't know what happens there. Your career takes a different path. So I think we all know how mental the game is and what a mental test it is at different times in your career. You're always going to have peaks and troughs and it's about learning from those. And I've always used the fuel of proving people wrong. You're always going to have critics, but that's something that's always driven me on.
You've played under 26 managers, which a lot of them great names, great managers. If you're going to go into coaching and be a manager, which one of those would you most like to be like that you've worked under?
I think it's hard to say one. I think every single manager is different, and every single one has their own qualities and negative sides. So I think it's important to be the best coach or the best player you can be. Same as a player, you take the best and worst bits from each manager and try replicate the good bits and try learn from other people's mistakes, if you like, and try not to do that side. So I think it's important to try get a mix of all the managers you've played under and take the best bits from them all. So the majority of them have very good bits that you can take from, and there's a couple that you wouldn't probably touch. But other than that, I've been very fortunate to play under some great managers, and I think it'd be good. It'd be a hell of a manager if you could become the one that has the best bits out of all of them.
Yeah, there's some fantastic names. I think it was Terry Venables, probably right at the start, like Peter Reid, so Bobby Robson, as you mentioned, Kevin Keegan, Martin O'Neill, Roberto Mancini, Pellegrini, Rodgers, Klopp, Capella. I mean, there's just huge names in there. But you talk about what you can learn from the managers that you've played under and maybe take it into potentially into a future role as a coach. But from your position now as one of the senior players, what kind of advice can you offer to the young players in the squad, I mean, particularly at Liverpool, where there are a lot of young players around and could be a lot of young players coming through?
Obviously, throughout your career, you've seen so many unbelievable players who haven't quite managed to get to the level that they should have done, really, because of various things, taking their eye off the ball, bit of bad luck, injuries, things like that. There's plenty of things I've done wrong or mistakes you've made in your career in games and other things as well. So I think you just try and stop anything happening before it does, in terms of players losing that focus or making mistakes maybe that they don't need to make, and have the lulls. You see lots of players burst onto the scene and then maybe struggle a bit while they're coming to terms with it. So anything that you can say or any way you can guide them to help them stay on that right track is important. And like you say, that's the role that changes. But the dressing room we have at Liverpool is very strong. The managers always set a great team spirit and rules and way of doing things, but also the players marshal it as well. And if everyone's in the gym before training, doing their own bits and pieces, if someone's not in that, they'll get ribbed and they'll get called out on what have you been doing. And I think that's a key part of that. It's everyone together, and that's a massive plus of the squad that's been built at Liverpool, that everyone polices it together. And that's not just the senior guys as well. Obviously Trent is young, but with the experience in games he's played in, he's obviously a big player. But he knows he can say what he thinks as well, and everyone feels part of it, even the younger guys, and that's the most important thing. I think that everyone feels a part of the side and the squad and the team.
Kelly's just mentioned that you've had lots of managers, so sometimes a player in your position, it's hard to have that association, if you like, what me and Gary have got with our clubs. But I just noticed something when last summer in Madrid, when Liverpool had won the Champions League, and you were the one who sort of ran to the supporters and dragged the other players with you. It really did mean something to you, I think, really. You'd been a sub as well, so to come on the pitch, I mean, how important was that victory, but how special was it sort of for you and that thing with Liverpool? Because it really does feel like you've really embedded yourself into the club now.
Yeah, I think obviously you and Gaz playing for one club, you're obviously known, associated with those clubs, and always will be. I think obviously as a player who's played for different ones, it depends how long you're at the club and your time. And I think I was desperate to get a trophy for this club. You walk into the Melwood every day and you see the trophies the club's won every single day. And obviously getting to the Champions League the year before, going close in the Premier League, the Europa League final, and the League Cup final, and having those near misses, that obviously made it even more special when we got there. But it's a massive thing playing for a club the size of Liverpool, and you see the history, and every day you see the players who have played, the players who have pulled on the number 7 shirt before me. Not a player there, but when you're playing and you're playing at Anfield and you get a taste of that atmosphere, and you get into finals and you're not quite getting over the line, to finally get over the line and contribute, number 6, which we know how massive that is for the club and how important it is, and the relationship it has with the European Cup. And also the similar thing that we had at City, it was so important to get off the mark and win that first trophy, and I think that was massive for us as a group. It's always important to win that first one and have other things, and obviously I managed to get the Super Cup and the World Championship this year, and it'd be nice to add more, but I think it was big to get over the line and win that first one together as a team, and that gives you then all the tools to go on and push on, and hopefully we can add more to that. We don't want to be known as the team that just won that one trophy. We want to push on and see if we can win as many as we can.
And James, you lifting the Champions League trophy seems as good a place as any to wrap everything up. Just before you go, do you always wear your training kit around the house?
Not normally, no, under strict orders at this moment in time. All appearances, obviously, to wear it. But yeah, there hasn't been too much smart clothes going on, I can say that. Obviously, it's training game most days, and that's about it.
That makes sense. I think we're all the same as well. James, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem.